So I want to just go ahead and kind of get started. I mean, my first question to you really is it goes back to what looks like crazy on an ordinary day. That was life saving. And I love the characters that were in there. Vanita and I were just actually talking before we called about Ava and how at the beginning, you know, she was a chick and she had a chick's life. She had her partners, she had a little drink in her, you know, she had her business. And I was just, you know, would love to know, you know, how did you develop these characters? You know, HIV in the 90s was not something that the black community really talked about, really engaged in. And your book, I think, really was pivotal in helping us start a dialogue about HIV and AIDS. So how did you come up with the characters and the subject
Really is
matter?
what I wanted to do was to, because I'd realized I'm in theater and I had a lot of gay male friends who were already dealing with HIV and AIDS and who were, since this was such a long time ago, they were having to discover information and really deal with the fact that this was something new that people were dealing with. But when I would try to talk to my heterosexual African American friends, their answers to me were almost always, that's not something we have to deal with. That's just something that gay white men have to deal with. That doesn't have anything to do with us. And I kept trying to say that's actually not true, that this is a sexually transmitted disease and all of us are going to have to deal with this. But I could not make a dent. I kept trying to talk to people because I knew how important it was. I had friends who were already facing life and death challenges. So that I decided that the best way for me to do this would be to write a story about a woman, much like many of us, who was living her life, having a great time, taking responsibility for herself in every way, just a good person, a regular, hardworking person who discovers that she's HIV positive. And it was very important to me that this character be a likable character who seems like she could be a friend of ours, who seems like somebody that you would know in your real life. I wasn't
That's true.
interested in trying to write a book where you begin with a character that nobody can like, nobody can relate to, and it starts off tragedy and gets more and more tragic as
Right.
it goes on.
Yeah.
And it's, I know that this is a very serious topic, but I think that part of what I was trying to do was to get people to make a distinction between the disease, which we're trying to fight and find as many different things as we can in that arsenal, and not be so frightened of the disease that we become judgmental of the people who have gotten the disease, because it was so clear to me that people were prepared to dismiss the population that they had identified as the most at risk, which would be gay men.
Mm-hmm.
They were prepared to kind of write them off like their lives weren't important. They shouldn't have been doing that nasty stuff anyway. And I was like, what century are we living in? Are we like going back to the 30s? Are we going back
Yep.
to the
Yeah.
20s? This is still the modern world. This is still the world where we celebrate the right to have sexual expression and to know that intimacy is a real amazing, wonderful, pleasurable part of our lives. So it's like the fact that people got so judgmental so fast really took me aback. I was like, wow, these people have become Puritans like overnight
Overnight.
because that
Mm-hmm.
fear was driving them. And to
You
write a book where the people, were likable, where you liked them, where you didn't have to be afraid of them, where it could be something where you would say to yourself, this could be me.
yeah.
This woman didn't do anything bad where this is a sentence from God that she did something bad. This is an illness. This is something that could be anybody. And that was really important to me at that, especially at that moment in the history of the conversation, to say, no, this is you. This isn't some bad girl who did bad things. This is you. This is me. This is all of us.
This is all of us. And I love when you said even just now, you said there were, you know, people were dying and it was very, you know, heavily impacting the gay community. And yet when you wrote from the standpoint of a woman as opposed to the standpoint of a gay male. And it almost just it resonates
Mm-hmm.
that's very much a central part of who you are as a writer, and that the voice of the woman was important to hear in spite of all of the attention going toward the male population at that time.
And
And
the two people that I knew who were very, very close friends of mine who have since passed were a black woman who contracted HIV through intravenous drug use with her husband, and a white gay male who was very much a part of the wildness of that moment when people like to cruise and find as many sexual partners as they wanted, just that he enjoyed all the wildness. They could not have been more different.
Mm.
And both of them were dealing with the same disease.
Hmm.
It wasn't like I was going to choose, okay, I'm going to not mention this, I'm going to not talk about this. It's like as a black woman, most of the time my main characters are going to be black women.
Yeah.
And the fact that I had a friend who was dealing with this, who was in exactly the way you're talking about, like triple marginalized, because everybody was acting like black women who can't be HIV positive, which puts us in the weird position of invisibility,
Mm.
part of
Oh,
what
yeah.
makes it challenging to be black and female, because we're so often not spoken of in the conversation. It's kind of assumed that we're an adjunct and not at the center of it, and that's always a big thing in my work. I'm always going to put us at the center. I think it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Keep yourself at the center of the story.
And
Yes.
we
Why
still,
would I do that?
yeah, and we still are trying to be in the forefront of this. I love what you just said about you were trying to distinguish between the disease and the person. That is so
Mm-hmm.
valuable back then and today, distinguishing
Yeah, it
between the
is.
person and the
And it's
disease.
interesting that we live in a moment where there are such extremes. There's extreme access to every kind of sexual material, every kind of pornography, every
Yeah.
kind of everything having to do with sexual exchanges. And on the other hand, we're in a time when people are incredibly judgmental, incredibly moralistic in an old kind of way, where they are prepared to kind of wrap their religion around them
Mm.
and make it seem as if everybody is supposed to believe it because they believe it. And it's so disheartening to me to see people kind of going backward in that way rather than moving forward and letting all that kind of judgmental stuff fall away, because it's not helpful and it's not true.
With our young girls, I think that's the other big piece that we see in the, as using HIV kind of as that platform of where we can engage. What are the messaging and the things that we're trying to put out there to encourage young women, 15, 13, 18, 25, this population with such high rates, not just of HIV, but of teen pregnancy and, other sexually transmitted diseases. We're having to talk about a myriad of new topics. And I mean, I have a 20-year-old, and Vanita's daughter is what, in her
40s.
your daughter's in her 40s?
Yes.
Golly. So you've already had this conversation, I assume.
But we continue
Continue to
it.
have the conversation.
Yes.
But we have to keep talking about
My nieces.
your nieces. Yep,
Yes.
she's in her 20s. So
Yeah.
we have to keep our ear open to what is going on and make sure that we're sharing those messages. But they're profound and different.
I do, and I think the other part of that is that we have to be conscious, and I think not only as women, but maybe especially as women, we have to be conscious of being careful that the only time we talk to young women about sex, we're not telling them about a problem.
Mm.
The only time we talk to them is when we're saying protect yourself from sexual
No,
assault.
that's true.
Right.
That's true.
Sexually transmitted diseases, because oftentimes the only conversations we have with these girls are conversations that scare them to death.
Yep.
They're like, damn, we're not talking to those old ladies anymore.
Anymore.
Rather than saying, okay, this is all true, and we want y'all to know this and protect yourselves, but to also find a way to talk with them about sex as something that is valuable and wonderful and can enrich their lives in creative ways, to talk about the role of empathy and intimacy in their relationships, because the whole idea that we only talk about sex in the context of it being a dangerous problem is really a problem in and of itself,
Mm-hmm.
because then we remove any feeling for the pleasure that actually makes people have sex in the first place.
Right.
Yes.
We
Right.
remove that from part of the dialogue, and then it's like, well, why are we risking all these things? Why are we all yearning for this? Why are we, doing these things that we do that seem so crazy, unless we can talk about the power of the other kinds of discussions that we need to have with them, so they won't just be scared. They'll also be honoring the power and the beauty of the sexuality that they carry, however they choose to express it.
So, I mean, one of the, Vinny, did you have anything you
No,
wanted to go?
go ahead.
All right. Well, one of the questions that I actually wanted to ask you about was in terms of the relationship that you have with the sisters of your soul. Do they appear in your books and in your poems and in your plays? And if so, can you tell us, a couple of examples of where they show up?
Well, I don't think it's so much the specific women who would be my friends or my sister, my daughter, who are certainly the women that are the circle that I depend on to be like my woman's eyes and ears and circle. But I think that more what translates into the books that I write and the plays that I write is that feeling, is how important it is to have women in your life as a woman, how important it is to have other relationships with women that allow you to know some women older than you, know some women younger than you, and continue those dialogues so that we don't cut ourselves off from any part of that woman community, that woman circle, but that we remember how important it is to continue to encounter members of that circle at every age. And I'm always trying to do that in my work to put a lot of different ages and a lot of different kinds of women with different lives and agendas together. Because I think that's what my life feels like. There's kinds of women moving through my life doing all kinds of things, believing all kinds of different things, and the richness of the tapestry, I think, is what is really wonderful for me. I have a friend who just got back from Brazil, went by herself, and she speaks fluent Portuguese, which she learned because she wanted to start going to Brazil. I have another friend who just got back with her wife from South Africa, and I'm saying these girls are just jumping around the world, and they're all my age. But it's so wonderful to look at the different women that I know and to see that we all continue to move ahead and have adventures and make allowances for bad knees and figure out how to get around it. What we do anyway. But to really, I think, continue to honor and appreciate the real presence of sisterhood in our lives and what it's meant. And I hear it when you talk about the friendship that you two have, where it's obviously a cornerstone of what keeps you sane in this crazy world.
Amen.
There's somebody you can call and say, okay, now tell me I'm not crazy. That's this. And then
Yep.
you tell the person what it is. And if it's a good friend, they will either say, you're right, you're not crazy, or they will say, girl, I have to tell you, you were really crazy when you did that. They will tell you the truth. And I'm sure y'all have had the experience both ways.
Yes.
But I think
Yes.
that's the thing that makes my storytelling, and I really think of myself as a storyteller. I think that's what
Yeah.
makes it appeal to the women who read my books and come and see my plays, because the friendships and the relationships seem like real people,
You,
seem like conversations that you could have had in your own kitchen,
Yep.
you know what I really appreciated in what looks like crazy on an ordinary day, and you mentioned that the people close to you, your sister and your daughter, and then Ava with her sister, and her name just totally
Joyce.
Joyce, escaped me. That relationship, I'm 12 years older than my younger sister. She's my only sister, but we're extremely close. So I could, on the opposite end, could relate. My sister would have said a lot of things that Ava
Joyce.
said to Joyce,
Mm-hmm.
and because she lived most of her life with me. My mother wasn't there. It was me basically taking care of her, and all the things she learned were with me mostly. So, and we are extremely close. So I totally related to that sisterhood and the relationship between the sisters, almost like mother daughter, but
Hmm.
sisters.
Yeah.
So
And I really love that character. I love Joyce's character so much that I gave her own book, because
Yes.
I wrote was, I wish I had a red dress, because Joyce needed her own book. She was like, come on now.
And she got her man and she got her man on her own.
But
She
sometimes, the characters are done, and then sometimes they have more to say
yeah.
to go with it.
Yeah. It was a phenomenal piece. Can you talk a little bit about how Flying West was, how you developed that, and how that empowerment piece really plays in? Because these were powerful chicks. They ran and owned and handled the men quite well
Went
themselves.
West. I thought they were wonderful. I had such a good time with that play. And it actually came about in a way that none of my other plays have. I was driving down the freeway, and I heard someone talking in the back seat of my car. And so I'm thinking, oh my God, somebody has crawled into my car. And I looked around, and of course there was nobody there. So I'm thinking, okay, either I'm going crazy or this is really something that I need to write down because this is a good idea. And so I pulled off the freeway, wrote down what I was hearing, and it ended up being Miss Leah, who is a
Mm.
character in the play, talking about her decision to go west and about her children having died in slavery and then her children having been sold away and all of that. But it was almost a complete monologue that came to me, and I've been writing all my life, but I never have moments like that, where something just comes from out of the blue. People say that happens to them. That doesn't happen to me.
Yeah. Oh.
I had enough sense to realize that this was something I needed to pursue. And I started trying to think about, I knew she was walking west, but, I had to figure out where would she have been walking? Where was she coming from? Where was she going? So I made up these characters, but it allowed me to really look at these amazing women who went west. And there were a lot of African American people, men and women, who went west. And it was not a story that I knew. I think, like many American people, I think about the Western expansion, and I tend to think of, cowboy movies, Hollywood movies,
Right.
all of that. And it was like the people that were mingling in those populations that were there, the indigenous people who had already been there, the Native Americans, and the other people that were coming from wherever they were coming from. That's the more interesting story to me, is the mix. How did all of those people get along together? There's a character in Flying West who ran away from slavery and was taken in by Seminoles in Florida, and then he went to Mexico, and then he came back. So I very much wanted to show that although we sometimes think we were captured here and nobody ever got away, black folks did run away. Black folks did get free. We did go to other countries. We did make alliances with Native American people that allowed us to blend into other cultures and protect ourselves so that we could be free. So that the complexity of all that I was discovering about the West really was the energy that was compelling me to write Flying West.
You just said you had so much fun writing. Where does your what is your fun generated by?
Writing is a pleasure to me. I've always done it ever since I learned how to read. I was 4 years old. My sister taught me how to read and write. And I've always done it. I've always loved to make up stories. And the fun of saying, okay, I think this is a character who could be in a story. This is a woman who was born in slavery and went west and ended up being a homesteader. Okay, what kind of story can my imagination construct around that one simple fact? And then I have to figure it out. What's the story? Is it about her? Is it about her going west? Is it about her as an old woman? Her as a young woman? What is it that I'm trying to communicate in this story? And that, I think that's probably why I'm a writer, because that process is so enjoyable to me, endlessly
Okay.
fascinating, because these characters don't exist until I make them up.
I'm just curious, that confidence that I feel, that energy coming from you. Where did that come from?
It's so interesting that you say that, because I do think I'm confident, but I think I'm like a weird contradiction, because I think I'm very confident, but I'm also terrified of a whole lot of stuff. So that the thing I'm the most
Blind.
confident about, which is probably what you're hearing from me, is my writing, my ability to tell a story. I feel like I have great skill with that, and that I was lucky enough to be born with a great talent for that. And I respect it, and I'm very disciplined about honoring the fact that I have this talent, and to push it to see where it can take me. The other thing I think that, I don't know if it gives me confidence, but it's part of the underpinning, I guess, of the kind of person I am. I am endlessly fascinated with human beings, with people, with why we do what we do. And it's always exciting to me, to watch us, to watch what we do, to think about what we do. And I think that part of the gaining of confidence comes from realizing that we're all just muddling through. I used to think I was the only one muddling through and everybody else really had it together. And then I got older and I said, you know what? I think they're muddling through too. I think everybody is just trying to do it. And the confidence is more feeling like, okay, even if I'm scared of it, even if it's something that I'm doing for the first time or something that I'm still scared of that I've been doing for a long time, I have been doing all of these things long enough now to know that I'll get through it. I'll figure it out. I will come out on the other side. And that's that basic confidence where you don't necessarily have that when you're 20 because you think, I have messed this up so bad. My life is over. I'll never be in love again. I'll never get another job. My mother will never speak to me. My grandmama's mad at me. All of that where you feel like the world is coming to an end. As opposed to now, I understand that there are moments when everything can be really trying and everything can seem like it's never going to straighten itself out. But if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep trying to tell the truth and not lie, keep trying to work hard and figure out what the hell you're supposed to be doing with your time on this earth, then I think that you become more confident that if you just keep moving, you will figure it out. You don't let yourself be overwhelmed by everything. And the more that happens, the more you realize that you can tell the truth and not get punished for it. You can have friendships and be honest with the person that you care about. All those things, the more it works out for you, the more you have confidence that being that kind of person will give you the kind of life that you're looking for. What I'm trying to do now, too, is to figure out ways that we can talk across generations. Because we know a lot of stuff that young women need to know that would be helpful so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And they know a lot of stuff that we need to know in order to understand them better. Because it's different being 15 now than it was when I was 15. Everything is different. And I'm very interested in this phase of my work that I'm just starting several new projects in exploring the ways that we as women can have meaningful cross-generational conversation. Where they don't mistrust us and we don't spend all our time telling them how we did it better. Where we actually learn to listen to each other, because I think it will strengthen all of this movement activity and activist energy that is moving through young black women. I think our support for them and our willingness to share our experiences with them will really help them to shape these movements in a way that can be extraordinary.
And wouldn't you say that part of it is actually just engaging and sitting with them in their space, in their world, learning their language? We learned the word fleek, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still struggling with what exactly it means. But I looked at my daughter like, okay, fleek, sure.
Right. Right.
Go with that.
We say, okay, yeah, I get it, and we don't get it. But
No, we don't get it. We don't get it. But like just listening to them and
it's tried. That's right.
yeah.
They want us to listen. A lot of us have a difficult time listening to them. We want to talk at them.
Right.
And it's
right.
like I'm trying to develop the skill of actually listening to them, even when they say things where you want to say, that is so wrong. Don't think that. Because you can't, I think about how much did I want somebody to tell me what to do when I was 17, 18 years old. I thought I was grown. I knew I was grown. And now I look at my little 17-year-old self and I want to laugh hysterically and say, how did my mother let that baby out into the world by herself?
I think we still say that about ourselves at 40.
Yeah.
Why am I free out here making these
Now,
decisions?
Why isn't somebody taking care of me? Supposed to be out here writing. And you say, I don't want to feel that way. But we have that, and we can, if we're honest, we can remember that moment when you desperately want to be free and on your own and not have anybody tell you anything about what to do. And you're also scared to death because you realize how complicated and mean the world can be. And it's those energies exist at the same time, which is why I think, young people often seem crazy to us. We forget all those contradictory emotions that are moving through, in addition to all the hormones and stuff. It's
right.
How they survive it, I do not know, but we do.
Can you talk a little bit about, you said you were working on some new projects to generate that type of dialogue or conversation, and Lord knows, can we please call you back as it's being developed so we can talk about it some more.
I was thinking that same thing when you said that.
In residence at the Alliance Theater in Atlanta.
Right.
I'm doing a play for them that's set in the West End neighborhood in Atlanta that has some cross-generational communication. I'm doing a performance piece with grandmothers in September at the Woodruff Art Center. And then I'm hoping to be doing a project at Spelman College with the young women there in the drama department about mothers and daughters. So I've got a lot of stuff coming up.
So either we're headed to Atlanta. Or one way or the other.
I will definitely let you know when all of this stuff is coming up. Yeah, because it would be great for you to be able to come and see some.
It would.
We would love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll look forward to it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, ladies,
part of what you're doing.
we're having a this is a wonderful experience, and we're looking forward to it. And I don't think we could have asked for a better beginning to Sisters of the Soul. You really not only gave us, some of you, but gave us some insight into, what we're trying to do in the direction that we're definitely wanting to move in. And you have truly blessed me with this conversation.
And for me. So thank you. For me too.
Have a good evening. Happy New Year.
You too.
Oh, yes. We
Bye-bye.
look forward to talking to you again.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
I could. So I want to just go